clerk's voice echoed in the nearly empty courtroom. Case number 47,293, Fairview Bank versus Marcus Johnson. From the back row, a 68-year-old man slowly stood up. His steps were steady, his chin raised. Marcus Johnson walked alone to the defense table, without a lawyer. "Mr. Johnson, you're representing yourself in this foreclosure case?" Judge Richard Brennan asked, clearly expecting just another routine hearing. "Yes, Your Honor," Marcus replied. His voice was firm, even though his frame looked frail. The bank's attorney, polished in his Italian suit, smirked as he arranged his papers. "Your Honor, the matter is simple. The defendant is 15 months behind on payments. Fairview Bank requests immediate foreclosure, as per contract." The judge barely glanced up. "Mr. Johnson, do you have anything to add in your defense?" Marcus drew a breath. "Your Honor, I served this country for 34 years in the armed forces, 3 tours in Afghanistan, 2 in Iraq. When I retired, my wife Eleanor was diagnosed with cancer. The treatments drained everything we had." The lawyer cut in smoothly. "We sympathize, but personal circumstances do not override the bank's rights." And then, everything changed. The judge flipped to the next page of the file. His hand froze. His face turned pale. He adjusted his glasses and read the name again, as if doubting his own eyes. "General Marcus D. Johnson?" he whispered. The courtroom went silent. Marcus gave a respectful nod. "Yes, sir. I retired as a 3-star general 6 years ago." The judge abruptly rose from his seat. "This court will take a 15-minute recess," he announced, his voice trembling. That was something no one had ever seen in such a routine session. When he returned, he wasn't alone. At his side walked an older officer in full-dress uniform, medals covering his chest. The clerk's voice rang out, "All rise." The man was none other than General William Harrison, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Gasps filled the room. The judge spoke with solemnity. "General Harrison has asked permission to address this court." The confident smirk vanished from the bank's lawyer. His hands twitched nervously on the stack of papers. Harrison walked forward, stopping directly in front of Marcus. With military precision, he snapped to attention. "General Johnson, sir, it is an honor to stand in your presence once again." Behind him, Judge Brennan also rose, offering the same respect, something utterly unheard of in civil court. The bank's lawyer tried to recover. "Gentlemen, with all respect, this case is still a matter of foreclosure. Former military service does not change the facts." Harrison's gaze locked on him, sharp as steel. "It's General Johnson, and before this court renders any decision, it will hear what I have to say." The judge leaned forward, nodding. "I agree. This hearing will not move forward until we've heard the full story." What no one in that room realized was that the name Marcus D. Johnson carried a secret, one deliberately buried in history books, a story of sacrifice, heroism, and lives saved. The truth about a forgotten figure whose actions in the Gulf War had shaped the very course of history. And now, the man who once saved thousands stood at risk of losing his home. Outside the courtroom, a woman in her mid-30s observed every detail with sharp focus. When the recess was called, she quietly approached Marcus. "General Johnson, I'm Dr. Amara Washington from the Office of Veterans Affairs. May I have a word?" In the silent hallway, she revealed files on her tablet. "General, my investigation into pension records uncovered something disturbing. Your benefits are being paid at 60% less than what's rightfully owed." Marcus frowned. "That can't be. I've always been told the numbers were correct." "You're not alone," Amara explained. "You're the 12th case I've uncovered, and there's a pattern. Most of those affected are high-ranking officers who share the same background as you." Marcus's expression stayed calm, but his eyes revealed recognition. He had faced veiled barriers all his life. This was just another face of the same battle. Meanwhile, in a private chamber, General Harrison placed a confidential folder before Judge Brennan. "Michael," he said, calling the judge by his first name, "the truth about Operation Desert Shield isn't in the official history. The original plan was catastrophic. It would have cost thousands of lives. Johnson ignored reckless orders. and saved 2,800 men. The judge's hands trembled as he turned the pages. So instead of recognition, he was quietly forced into retirement? Exactly, Harrison replied. Some in power couldn't allow it to be known that Johnson was right while the command above him was wrong. Back in the lobby, the bank's attorney barked into his phone. I don't care who he used to be. We need that property for the resort deal. Buyers are lined up. He's just an old man who couldn't keep up with payments. He didn't notice Amara nearby, recording every word on her phone. 2 hours later, the hearing resumed. The lawyer smirked again when he saw Harrison was gone. Your Honor, with all due respect, the defendant's service record is admirable, but it doesn't change the facts. He's in default, and the bank is entitled to foreclose. Judge Brennan turned to Marcus. General Johnson, do you wish to speak before I decide? Marcus rose slowly. To everyone's surprise, Doctor. Washington joined him at the table. Your Honor, Marcus said firmly, this is my legal representative. The bank's attorney laughed. A last-minute lawyer won't change the inevitable. Amara's calm voice cut through the room. Actually, I've been preparing this case in silence for 6 months. She placed a thick folder on the judge's desk. We request a 30-day postponement under the Civil Relief Act, and we are filing a counterclaim against Fairview Bank. The attorney scoffed. On what grounds? Amara's lips curved into the faintest smile. Predatory lending, violations of equal credit laws, and evidence that this bank deliberately targeted veterans with unfair contracts. Over 700 victims. We have the proof. The lawyer's confident grin dissolved. What the courtroom didn't yet realize was that Marcus Johnson wasn't simply fighting to save his home. Behind this man stood a network of veterans and civil rights experts who had been building a case for months. Their evidence didn't just threaten to expose Fairview Bank. It reached deep into the halls of the Pentagon itself. The bank thought they were up against a frail, forgotten soldier. In reality, they were facing a strategist who had spent his life turning impossible odds into victory, and in his pocket, Marcus carried a flash drive with documents powerful enough to shake Washington to its core. 3 weeks later, the room was filled to capacity when the case resumed. The bank's lawyer, still forcing a confident smile, whispered to his assistants, "How dangerous can a last-minute investigation really be?" "All rise for Judge Richard Brennan," the clerk called. The judge entered with a grave face, this time followed by 2 representatives from the Department of Justice. Their presence made the bank's lawyer visibly uneasy. "Before we proceed," the judge declared, "this court has received new evidence of substantial importance." He turned to Amara. "Dr. Washington, the motion to admit your evidence is granted." The room went silent. What came next would change everything. Amara rose with quiet confidence. At her side, Marcus stood tall, his posture radiating the same disciplined dignity that had carried him through decades of service. "Your Honor, we request permission to introduce Exhibit A," she said firmly. "It documents a systematic pattern of discrimination at Fairview Bank against retired military officers." The bank's attorney shot up instantly. "Objection! That has nothing to do with the foreclosure case." "Overruled," Judge Brennan replied dryly. "Proceed, Dr. Washington." The courtroom screen flickered to life, displaying graphs and charts. Our analysis covers 2,467 loans made by Fairview Bank to veterans over the past 8 years. White veterans of equivalent rank received interest rates between 3.1 and 3.8%. Meanwhile, black veterans received rates between 5.9 and 7.2%. Gasps filled the room. The bank's lawyer shifted in his seat. "And more specifically," Amara continued, "the higher the rank, the higher the penalty. The most accomplished officers were hit with the steepest rates." "That's absurd," the lawyer snapped. "Correlation is not causation. Interest rates depend on many factors." Amara's lips curved slightly. "Indeed, which is why we brought this." She pulled up a series of internal bank emails. One read, "Risk profiles need to be reassessed for minority military clients. We know they are more likely to struggle after retirement due to socioeconomic background." The lawyer's face went pale, And this one, Amara pressed, pulling up another dated September 2019, refers specifically to General Johnson's mortgage. This property is exactly where we need it for the resort project. Handle with maximum aggression. These people usually can't afford decent lawyers. Judge Brennan leaned forward. Dr. Washington, are you saying the bank manipulated Johnson's loan with the intent to force foreclosure? That is precisely what I am saying, Your Honor. She then called her first witness, Mr. Lawson, a former Veterans Affairs employee, who trembled as he raised his hand to testify. I was tasked with pension recalculations, he admitted. We were ordered to apply a new algorithm. It didn't affect everyone equally. It specifically reduced payments to officers decorated in certain Middle East operations. Such as Desert Shield, Amara pressed. Lawson's voice cracked. Yes. The courtroom watched in stunned silence as Amara displayed a classified memo labeled Operation Rectification. It detailed how select officers had been systematically underpaid to erase their records of contribution. Your Honor, Amara said firmly, what we see here is more than predatory lending. This is a coordinated effort across both public and private sectors, a deliberate system targeting those who serve this country at the highest level. Just then, the heavy doors swung open. 6 men and women in full military dress entered, each carrying classified folders. The bank's lawyer looked as though his world had collapsed. General Harrison, now returned with authorization, addressed the bench. Your Honor, we are prepared to reveal the truth about General Johnson's actions during Operation Desert Shield, information buried for 32 years. The room went still as Harrison stepped forward. In January 1991, then Colonel Johnson received orders to move 2,800 troops into a valley near the Iraqi border. Intelligence claimed it was a strategic point. Johnson disagreed. Based on his knowledge of the terrain, he believed it was an ambush. Harrison projected old tactical maps onto the screen. When his warnings were ignored, he deliberately delayed the deployment. For 18 hours he stalled, risking his career. Satellite scans later confirmed what he already knew. Enemy forces were waiting in that valley. His disobedience saved thousands of American lives. Harrison's voice hardened. And how was he rewarded? Quiet retirement, his heroism erased, his legacy buried because some in power couldn't admit he was right when they were wrong. All eyes turned to Marcus, who stood silent, resolute. And for the first time, the courtroom understood. The man fighting for his home wasn't just a veteran. He was the forgotten strategist who had once defied orders to save an army. Harrison's voice carried through the courtroom like a verdict. He was punished in silence, his 5th star denied, his pension reduced, and when his wife grew ill, the very system he had served turned its back on him. The bank's attorney was drenched in sweat, finally realizing who stood across from him. Your Honor, Amara declared, her tone unwavering, we request immediate dismissal of this foreclosure, a full federal review of the loan, complete compensation for proven discrimination, and a formal investigation into Fairview Bank's practices. Judge Brennan turned his gaze to the lawyer. Counsel, do you have anything to add in your defense? The attorney rose, voice heavy with defeat. Your Honor, Fairview Bank requests a brief recess to reconsider its position. Denied, the judge said firmly. You've had 3 weeks. The court will decide now. The gavel struck once, echoing like a cannon shot. Marcus Johnson had won. The bank's lawyer stared at him, the man they had dismissed as weak and alone. But Marcus looked back with no gloating, no arrogance, only the quiet certainty of a strategist who had always known how this battle would end. Outside, reporters swarmed. What had begun as a routine foreclosure now exploded into headlines that shook the banking industry, the Department of Defense, and even the Pentagon itself. Marcus Johnson's story had become a national symbol. Within a week, the Department of Justice announced a sweeping investigation into discriminatory lending practices against military veterans. Fairview Bank scrambled to save face, offering Marcus a private settlement, his house cleared of debt, plus substantial compensation. but his lawyer read his response. General Johnson does not accept silence. Justice should never be hidden in the shadows. 3 months later, the federal ruling arrived. Fairview Bank was fined $87 million for systemic discrimination and ordered to review every veteran loan from the past decade. Vice President Lawrence Keller and Regional Director Simon Whitford faced criminal charges. As for Marcus's home, the mortgage was wiped clean and the bank was ordered to pay triple the property's value in damages. In his only interview, Marcus told CNN, "It was never about money. It was about exposing a system that treats some of its heroes as disposable. I wanted the truth seen by everyone." The Pentagon itself couldn't escape scrutiny. A bipartisan commission was formed to investigate disparities in pensions for service members. And so, what began as one man standing alone against foreclosure transformed into a turning point in the nation's conscience, forcing America to confront how it honored or failed to honor those who had sacrificed everything in its name. The outcome was historic. More than 700 minority officers received retroactive adjustments, totaling over $400 million in benefits that had been unjustly denied for decades. That fall, Marcus Johnson used part of his compensation to create the Eleanor Johnson Foundation, named after his late wife. Its mission: to provide free legal aid for veterans facing financial or housing discrimination. At the foundation's dedication ceremony, the audience gasped when Judge Richard Brennan appeared as a surprise guest. The two men, both now silver-haired, shook hands to a standing ovation. "Your Honor," Marcus said with a gentle smile, "I suppose I should thank you for taking a second look at my case." "General," Brennan replied, his voice steady, "it was a privilege to help correct an injustice that never should have happened." Later that evening, away from the cameras, Brennan confessed something that had weighed on him for 30 years. His own son had served as a young lieutenant under Marcus's indirect command during Operation Desert Shield, assigned to the very unit that Marcus had refused to send into the valley. "You didn't just save nameless soldiers that day," Brennan said, his voice breaking. "You saved my son, and for 3 decades I never had the chance to thank you, because the truth remained classified." Meanwhile, the aftermath for those who had tried to crush Marcus was grim. The disgraced Fairview Bank lawyer now worked in a tiny office on the outskirts of town, his reputation destroyed after his remarks about veterans became public. When people recognized him on the street, they crossed to the other side. As for the bank executives, Lawrence Keller served time in federal prison, while Simon Whitford pleaded guilty in exchange for a lighter sentence and community service, ironically, at a shelter for homeless veterans. On a bright spring Sunday, General Marcus Johnson sat on the porch of his restored home, the house where he had raised his children, cared for Eleanor in her final days, and nearly lost to injustice. Beside him lay a stack of letters from veterans across the country, men and women with similar stories, all seeking guidance. "We deserve more than empty words on holidays," Marcus said quietly to Amara, who now led the foundation's legal team. "We deserve the same respect and justice we swore to defend." As the sun set over the garden Eleanor had once tended with love, Marcus watched a group of young officers arrive, seeking advice, inspiration, and courage. In their eyes, he saw something long absent: renewed hope in the promise of equality. General Johnson's true victory wasn't defeating a bank. It wasn't financial compensation. His victory was ensuring that the next generation would no longer have to fight their battles in silence. They tried to take everything from him. Instead, they gave him a platform to change the nation. His revenge was not destruction, his revenge was legacy.